This Monero Matteo video is sponsored by Cake Wallet. Safely store, send, receive, and trade your Monero on Cake Wallet on Android and iOS. All right, we're in the mode. Monero Matteo, welcome back. And you can tell we're in the mode because we got our smart paraphernalia on today. We've got the glasses, we've got the vestiture, and I look like I know what I'm talking about. And, you know, we're going to have to take these off at some point and put on the narrow shades because we're going to be talking about darknet marketplaces. We got to get our Jose Sanchez on, man. We're going to be making those narrows, selling our Skittles on the dark web. So it's going to be awesome talking about these stories because it just, you know, compounds a super hyper mega bullish case for Monero, what we've been talking about for many, many months now. And I think it's a very good opportunity for us to go back to this particular subject, which we haven't really talked about much recently, which is the expansion of Monero on the darknet sites. And I'm not a darknet bro. I don't surf the darknets. I've never been on the dark web, actually. I have no interest to go there. I mean, there's nothing there for me. But, you know, it's interesting to note that the people who are really having to rely on privacy in order to stay out of jail, well, they're using Monero more and more and more. And the biggest Bitcoin marketplace, well, the biggest darknet marketplace in general was just shut down recently, and they were a Bitcoin-only marketplace. They didn't even use Monero. And we don't know yet how it is everything got traced, how everything got tracked down, but they got shut down, which leaves a huge opportunity for Monero and Monero-based marketplaces to enter the space. I'll have you guys recall that when Alphabet was trying to make a comeback, they had said that they were just going to be using Monero. There's not going to be any Bitcoin allowed. And we'll go into a story that we've sort of mentioned in passing multiple times, but it's a story about this marketplace which was effectively shut down because of one Bitcoin transaction which had bad OPSEC. They were able to see some details about that transaction, unravel it, and then boom, went to the marketplace. Now, maybe that happened with this particular instance. They did run a giant Bitcoin mixing operation. We've talked about the privacy flaws with Bitcoin mixers. We've looked at Wasabi and how there are issues with that. And we've talked about, in general, if you're using a mixer, they can see using the mixer or a mixing type of service, and then your coins can be tainted coming out of the mixer, right? Even if they maybe don't belong to you or they aren't tied to you, there are still chain analysis companies that are looking at that saying, yes, this has been involved in high risk activity. And so if you try to get that onto an exchange or you try to put that up as collateral for a loan, you may find yourself in trouble. As we've talked about multiple times here on the channel. But that is just to start this off. Before I get into the content, I just want to say a couple things. First off, Monerotopia, super key. I'm really hoping you guys have a great time. Thank you, Doug, for putting on the event. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it down there. Hopefully next year it's not during the busiest part of tax season. And, you know, I get it. You want to have it at the same time as the Bitcoin conference so that you can kind of at least get some exposure to the Bitcoin bros, and so that you could have conversations with them about maybe some problems with Bitcoin, why Monero is really good. It's more than just your basic state-of-the-art privacy coin. I mean, you've got scalability, you've got quick transaction speeds, you've got Haveno, you've got RandomX, decentralized peer-to-peer mining pools. I mean, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. I could go into all of it. But if you watch this channel, you know all the great stuff going on with Monero, and it's great that some of you are going to be down there to spread that to the Bitcoin bros. So hopefully by the end of this, we have more recruits into the Monero Bro Battalion. And we have more people who are excited about this project and what it could do for human freedom. So that's one thing I wanted to note. And I also want to say thank you to my patrons. Thank you, patrons. And we got a new patron, Zaptosis General Zap, who was the man responsible for getting the truckers to accept Monero. The truckers up in Canada, you guys recall all that. We made a couple videos on it. big win for the Monero Battalion was Zaptosis getting the truckers to adopt Monero is a huge deal. And given that we saw after the fact that a lot of the truckers had their Bitcoin traced and a lot of the people who donated Bitcoin were themselves traced, and it was just a whole fiasco, that was a huge win. And I think we set a precedent there. I think we set a very good precedent there. So thank you, Zaptosis, for that and for also becoming a patron. I really appreciate it. Next, a Dero public service announcement. I was supposed to make a video on this just exclusively, but with everything going on, I just don't have the time. Guys, if you have Dero, if you're a Dero bro, you want to get off the Atlantis blockchain and get onto Stargate. You've got a couple months to do this. I'll make a video on this when I have time, but you want to take your Dero from the command line wallet or from the web wallet that you've got. You're going to want to send it to a service like TradeOgre or do the swap yourself. I just did TradeOgre. You send it to your Atlantis wallet address, and then you make the swap on TradeOgre, and it goes through like 50 confirmations. They do the swap for you. They put it back into your Stargate wallet, and then you go from there, and you can take it to your command line wallet. They don't have the GUI set up yet, but they do have the service for you to swap it out. And if you go to TradeOgre, well, you can see when you open up your balance on Dero that you'll have two separate wallet addresses. One is for Atlantis, one is for Stargate. Send your Dero to the Atlantis address. They'll do the swap for you, and then they'll give it to you on the Stargate. Really easy, guys, but I wanted to tell you that, guys, that because some people aren't aware that, one, they're on the mainnet now, and two, now that they're on the mainnet, you got to make that swap to the chain. So that's just one thing I wanted to note. Number 3 on the list, I got a pretty good donation on Saturday from a Monero bro. Thank you, and I just wanted to say thank you. You know who you are if you did it. Just wanted to give you a shout out. I didn't get an email, and we talk about private super chats here on the channel. You could send a little bit of something through the Pirate Chain blockchain, and you can include a message that is also private, and you can send that in as well. But this person sent Monero, and typically what people do is they send like a Proton Mail message to me, and then I read it out. It's sort of like a private super chat. We do Xana, we do Concealed Network 2, whatever. But I want to say thank you to that person. So sorry for the longer opening. I just need to get that stuff out of the way. Graciously thank the support that is going on in the Great Monero community. And yeah, let's just get to the content. So what's going on? Well, this is for Seth for Prophecy, and honestly, I should just start paying Seth for Prophecy with all the tweets that I read here from him on the channel. Great leader in the space. He says, the largest DNM, which is darknet market in the world, and one of the few large markets that was Bitcoin only, was shut down today by German/US law enforcement. No clear details on how the admins and thus servers were tracked down so far, but all the Bitcoin was confiscated. It was about $25 million of Bitcoin. Pretty big number. And so let's read more of his analysis here. He says, more on-chain details here as well via the excellent work of Ergo. Yeah, the servers were seized. They got a 543 Bitcoin. It was a big deal. Hydra accounted for 80%, roughly, of the entire market share of darknet markets. That's huge, guys, and they were Bitcoin only. And absolutely massive dominance in the space, and one that leaves a huge gap to be filled. And he says, very curious to see how this shakes up the darknet market space overall and to learn more about how it was shut down. Yeah, we still need to await updates, guys. We still need to see what happened here. I'm not going to have any speculation as of now as to what happened, but given the privacy risks that come with these mixing tools, especially as we've seen over the last few months, it could have something to do with that, but we don't know yet. We don't know yet, so we shouldn't speculate. But we have seen other exchanges get shut down because of the inferior privacy of Bitcoin. So moving on, he shows some charts. And Max here, he has a statement on this. He says, I suspect, and this is Max Tannehill, I want to make sure I get that right, suspect this may be a bit of a turning point for Bitcoin. And he says probably the last Bitcoin will be used at scale on darknet marketplaces. And then Ancient Silence says, then something different will be used, maybe something that isn't using a transparent ledger. Just my opinion. Right. Now, you may say, if you're, sort of like a goody-goody bro. Hey, it's great that Bitcoin's transparent. We just caught some bad guys. Well, here's the deal, goody-goody bro. You live in a world now, if you haven't been paying attention, where the definition of criminal is becoming ever more blurred. It's not obvious anymore who is a criminal, who isn't, because we're run by criminals. And when you are in a kleptocracy, then it's not clear who is in the right and who's in the wrong in any given circumstance, because if you are on the wrong side of those who are wrong, but they have power, then you could find yourself in hot water. And so it's not clear anymore that the rule of law is going to protect you, which you would like to have if you're going to have a transparent ledger. The theory is that if governments adopt Bitcoin and we all get on the Bitcoin standard, well, truth is going to reign and we're going to turn civilization around. But I think this misses the fact that you can't enforce morality with money. I don't know why this is hard to explain, but a lot of people in the crypto sphere tend to have this perspective where it's like, oh, we go back to a sound money standard. The rule of law comes back. People just start naturally being good again. It's like, no, that's not how this works at all. Roman Empire, anybody? They had a sound money system. So did every system until 1000 AD when the Chinese came up with the first fiat system. But, you've had many sound money systems. And even if the governments adopt Bitcoin, I mean, what's to say that they don't go off the Bitcoin standard, just like they went off the gold standard, right? But we could go down that whole line of reasoning. But the whole thing is morality is not contingent on money. And so if you are thinking that you can use a transparent ledger and that's going to be fine and dandy once the elites and once the technocracy just somehow crashes, which is a big hope on the behalf of the Bitcoin bros. There is this sort of like faith that, we either go through hyper-Bitcoinization or we go through some like big collapse period and then, just things work out and then like some moral institution takes over. I just don't think that is what's actually taking place right now, and I don't think that's what's going to happen if we ignore the fundamental issues, which we've talked about here on the channel, which is really the decay of our Christian civilization and the decay of the rule of law, not only without, but also within, because we don't have that spiritual strength anymore, and we don't have that rock. So that's just a couple notes on that. I mean, it just really highlights the need for privacy, and something which is private by default, especially because we hear all the time, oh, bro, just read the 60,000-page Bitcoin privacy guide. So easy. But, if you're a dude like me who doesn't have time for stuff like that, you want something that's just plug and play private. You just want something that works, right? I almost think, the whole Bitcoin privacy thing is like an intellectual fetish. I think it's sort of like this quasi-new age thing. Where it's like people who can actually use this stuff privately, they're like, oh, I know the ways. I am a master of Bitcoin privacy. Nobody can touch my Bitcoin because I've read the guides. I've been in the ivory towers reading the tombs of how to use this stuff privately, right? And it's like most people are not going to understand that stuff. And you can tell people, yes, you can use this stuff privately. Just listen to me. It's sort of like a pride thing. Whereas, if you really want mass adoption and you really do care about protecting people, and I do see Bitcoin bros who are like, this is about human rights. Okay, well, if you're all about human rights and you fear the government and you think the governments are the biggest violators of human rights throughout history, which is typically the case, then you would want people to adopt something which protects their privacy and protects their sovereignty. And if you don't have a crypto which does that effectively because their information is being leaked because it's on a transparent chain, that information is being leaked to, I don't know, human rights violators who have a lot of power and a lot of money, endless money really, because of the central bank monetary expansion, well, then, you could have a little bit of a dissonance going on thinking that's going to work, or at least that's optimal, right? But we're seeing more of a change. We're seeing some Bitcoin bros wake up to this. And we've been talking about more people who are recognizing the value of Monero, from Bitcoin Cash, from Bitcoin. And I think this trend is going to continue, and this is going to, I think, push that forward. So, excuse the rant. I just had to sort of get that out. But let's sort of comment more on Seth's analysis here of this. Good article with a few more details here. Hydra was huge because it wasn't just a substance market, but a money laundering cash out service, taking in $200 million in stolen crypto in 21 to 2022 alone. Excuse me. Vendors on Hydra even sold bundles of rubles for Bitcoin, buried in dead drops for customers to dig up. And this is important. I really want to highlight this because when we talk about Haveno here in a little bit, you're going to realize that a huge opportunity just opened up. Like there's a huge demand, which is still going to need to be filled, which is people who have a lot of dirty crypto from doing whatever nefarious activity to get into fiat, to get into liquid cash so that they can, pay their taxes. Do they pay taxes on their ill-gotten gains? Maybe not, or to pay vendors or to just participate in the regulated economy, right? There's still going to be a demand for that. And when you have Haveno, which is a decentralized peer-to-peer exchange based on Monero, which is very private, and you can swap your national currencies for Monero and then go from Monero to another cryptocurrency. It's not just going to be Monero to national currency. It's going to be to a lot of different cryptocurrencies. That's going to take up a lot of this market here. And people are going to do it, I think, even easier because, we'll see about that. I'm not a tech whiz. Easier is sort of relative, but let's move on. That's, I think, the end of the analysis. Mark What's His Face, friend of the channel, he says, I like the greatest criminal. Oh, excuse me. I'd be like the greatest criminal if this is what the market has to offer. A Bitcoin-only market taking 80% of the market share. It's like they want to be caught. Criminals who choose convenience over competence aren't criminals for long. Right. I think that's a good statement. I think that makes a lot of sense. Monero Germany. He says, Bitcoin only. Many buyers and vendors are now in serious trouble. And you know why? Seth says, this one is absolutely massive for many reasons. One, Hydra had 80% of the market share. Two, Hydra acted as a custodial mixer, which is a centralized mixer. And three, Hydra acted as a custodial exchange. So all the details of each sale, each mix, and each trade will all likely be in law enforcement hands now. Now that's key, guys. That is super key. They've got the logs and maybe the IP address. Now you'd think people using the darknet marketplaces, they probably have scramblers for that, but I don't know how sophisticated the law enforcement tech is in order to unscramble that. I mean, I've been surprised again and again and again as somebody who's not a tech whiz as to how much law enforcement can uncover with the tools that they have. But I want to read this short article from Cryptonomist. .ch, and they talk about centralized mixers and some of the problems with that. But they say centralized mixers are privately owned services that accept your coin and send back different coins for a fee. And the more people that use it, generally the better, the more quote-unquote anonymity set. It says, however, the security and privacy offered by these third-party services are questionable. As a user, you need to trust your funds with the mixer. There's no guarantee that these mixers will return your funds. Right. So the dude could just get up and walk away, whoever's operating these things, right? So you are having a risk there. But also, in terms of privacy, centralized mixers have access to your Bitcoin and IP addresses. They ultimately know which address sent and received which coins and are probably keeping a log. They may decide to sell this information, and if you're on the dark web and you can make money off really any information that's out there, maybe you do sell that information. And maybe these people who are running this mixing site, maybe they're getting information on everybody that they're mixing just so that they could have a higher capacity to make an extra profit, make an extra buck. Maybe they figure out who you are. Maybe they figure out other people that you're dealing with. And then there's something there that's profitable for them to sell to somebody else who could take advantage of that information, right? I mean, on the dark net, everything's for sale. That's the whole point. So maybe that's what's going on. Or are compelled by law enforcement to share the data, or they just get compromised, right? And then the law enforcement has that data. Compromising your privacy. In an ideal centralized mixer, all this information regarding the user is deleted, ideally. So we'll see what happens. Again, we still got to wait for more information to come out on this, but it's just interesting what's going on. And by the way, I think that as you have the biggest Bitcoin mixer and darknet operated site, I didn't word that properly, the biggest Bitcoin only site on the dark web go offline at the same time when Monero adoption is growing on the darknet. I mean, that's just super hyper mega bullish for that particular development. And again, guys, I don't sponsor dark web activity. I don't think it's great. But we have talked about how there's going to be an ever increasing need to use either the darknet or just black markets in general. And I want to stay away from the term black market in referencing this because it's really just the free market that we're talking about here. Black market, it sort of taints the connotation of this phenomenon, which occurs because of arbitrary rules and regulations, which are imposed by third parties like the government. Whenever there's a demand for something, there's going to be somebody who profits from supplying something or a solution, a good or service for that demand. And so, maybe sometimes those things are good, sometimes those things are bad. In this context, most of the things are bad. But as we move into the future, again, as the kleptocracy takes over, and as we have more food shortages, as we have more just in general resource shortages, as we have more inflation, which means you have price controls, which means even more shortages because, people front run the inflation and supply chains break down because, price stability and or price instability and all that stuff. Well, you're going to have more demand for people to go onto marketplaces like this in order to get what it is they could need. I mean, I'll have you guys recall during the whole COVID thing early on, you went to a store, you couldn't find hand sanitizer, you couldn't find masks, you couldn't find personal protective equipment. Where did it all go? Well, people thinking said to themselves, well, people are going to need this stuff in a couple weeks when they wake up to see how valuable this stuff is. And they thought to themselves, these masks, it's only worth $10 at this Home Depot. But I could probably sell this in 2 weeks on Amazon for $200, which is exactly what happened, guys. It was crazy. But Amazon then did what? Amazon kicked them off because there was a lot of public pressure put on Amazon that said, oh, you guys are price gouging or you guys are enabling price gouging. And so what did those people do? They went to the darknet marketplaces. We actually went through research reports that showed this a long, long time ago. But again, wherever there is a demand for a good or service, there is going to be somebody to supply it for a cost. And if you can't use Bitcoin because increasingly these markets are only Monero based, well, that's going to drive up the demand for Monero a lot because that's going to be your tool that you need in order to get the goods or services that you may otherwise not be able to get in this world of ever-increasing scarcity. So that's just something to note. And this is the example that we discussed in regards to a single Bitcoin transaction revealing the location of a darknet market server. And I believe it was Hansa. Yeah, Hansa here. And this was posted 4 years ago. I don't even know if I still need to cite this guy. The Devil's Compiler. Thank you, bro. He says Hansa was a major darknet market takedown and took. Excuse me. I just had an Impossible Whopper. It's Lent, and I was just so freaking hungry. I had come home from doing a bunch of taxes, and I just had a hankering for like something that was a little bit heartier than some chips. And I go to, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It actually tasted okay, if you can believe it. But I'll tell you what, if my hair starts to discolor and it starts to turn like a neon yellow, or I start to have like piercings like pop out of my face, you guys know what happened. So moving on, the details of how this market was compromised was not known. And this is one of the first articles to disclose the details. Apparently, a single Bitcoin transaction was the break law enforcement needed to find the location of the servers. So, yep. And again, Chainalysis was on the scene for that. I mean, how many people work for Chainalysis? It's crazy how deep they are in everything. So let's move on. You can read more details about that. This is a Reddit post on the Monero site, but you could go to wired.com. The story is there if you want to dig more into that. Shutdown of Russia's Hydra market disrupts a crypto crime ATM. And it says, and this is from Wired as well, more than just a market for illegal substances, the dark web site allowed criminals to launder cash and cash out hundreds of millions in stolen cryptocurrency. So moving on, on the dark web, the takedown of yet another cryptocurrency-based black market for substances has come has become also a semi-annual routine with plenty of competitors ready to fill the shoes of any law enforcement bustable marketplace. So, yeah, I mean, you're going to have competitors move in. They're probably going to be Monero-based, especially because with stuff like this going on, people are going to increase their OPSEC, and they have ever more reason to justify people to switch to Monero, right? Especially if it comes out that there was some OPSEC problem with somebody using Bitcoin, which led to this problem. So, but the seizure of Russian language dark website Hydra may have ripple effects that go further than most. It represents a disruption of not just the post-Soviet world's biggest hub of online narcotic sales, but also of a cyber criminal money laundering and cash out service that has been used in crimes with victims across the globe. So that's key to note. It had 17 million customers. Oh my goodness. That's a lot of people. In total, Hydra facilitated more than $5 billion in illicit cryptocurrency market transactions since it launched in 2015. That's a good bit, according to blockchain analysis from Elliptic. So this is interesting. But Hydra also played a significant, more global role for cyber criminals. It offered, quote-unquote, mixing services designed to launder crypto and make it more difficult to trace, alongside exchange services that allow clients to trade in crypto proceeds from all manner of crime for Russian rubles. And it goes into an interesting thing about like these services that bury cash in certain dead drop locations, and there's like a premium that's paid for that. It's kind of interesting. So moving on. The Treasury sanctioned a lot of these wallet addresses on OFAC, which we've talked about here, which is something that's going on. And they also sanctioned an entire Russian crypto exchange as a result of this. So we're seeing more sanctioning going on in regards to crypto, more blacklisting of addresses, and also exchanges. Now, if my memory serves me right, that's the second exchange that we've seen, which has been just totally sanctioned. Now, typically they're Russian exchanges, but maybe that advances to something else. Maybe it justifies more KYC. Maybe it justifies OFAC mining pools just to make sure that everybody's compliant. Moving on. As a cash out service, Hydra didn't function like a normal exchange in which users could trade cryptocurrency for traditional dollars or euros in a bank account or vice versa. Instead, according to the Russian-speaking analysts at threat intelligence firm Flashpoint, the market offered services in which customers could spend cryptocurrency to buy rubles from vendors on the site. So this is interesting. Take note. That's a very distinct service, which something else is going to take the market share of. Moving on, which were then sent to the buyer with payment services like Kiwi, Tinkoff, or Yandex Money, which has since rebranded as U Money. Interesting. So they talk about the dead drop stuff there, which is pretty interesting. Let's move on. Yep. Okay, so that's about all I want to read for that. Now let's talk about Haveno. Haveno, we've talked about a lot here on the channel, but for those of you who don't know, you're going to be able to exchange your fiat currencies for Monero or for whatever cryptocurrency you want. Now, as of now, Haveno is going to just support Monero, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Ethereum. Now, there's a lot of liquidity there, and I imagine the number of cryptos you can exchange for is going to expand, but this is key. Now, you can't use ruble currently, so in regards to that particular segment of the market, maybe it's not going to be filled by Haveno, but this service in general is going to be used quite a lot, and this is definitely going to increase the liquidity for Monero because more people for various reasons, are going to want to use something like this if either they're trading crypto or they want to wash their Bitcoin out. They want to trust something that's more private than the mixers, which we've been hearing more and more are having issues. And this is a way that you could be completely private because it's going to be a fork of BIS that's based on Monero. So everything's going to be private. There's also going to be Tor elements involved, which make it more private. I mean, people are going to want to use this as a way to trade crypto and to kind of do what these people were doing here, cash out cryptocurrency gains, whether gained rightly or wrongly, legally or illegally, into cash. And Haveno allows that to happen. And I'm sure they don't endorse any illegal activity, neither do we. We're just looking at this from a kind of objective analysis as to what possibly could happen. But it's going to be no KYC. It is and always will be non-KYC according to the website. And it's going to basically be like a local Monero except international. It's going to be peer-to-peer, so you're going to be looking for somebody out in the world to trade your Monero to for cash. But instead of having to necessarily meet them in person, you could link up with them, and you guys could be thousands of miles apart, and you could do cash by mail, Western Union, or whatever. And if something goes wrong, they've got dispute resolution procedures. Wow, that sounded autistic. Procedures, or other ways that disputes can be resolved. They've got the Engine Council. They've got sort of like a governance structure, which some people aren't too excited about, but that's sort of what this is at the moment. And, atomic swaps are probably going to be increasingly used. Let's see, censorship resistance. Yep, thanks to an absence of a central server. It's non-custodial. So unlike this service that we just talked about here on Hydra, there's not going to be any centralization for the service. And that definitely makes it more private and trustworthy. It's being built on Tor. So those are things to note. People would rather use that, I imagine, than the service we just talked about that just got busted. All right. So good news. Haveno is totally funded now. So yeah, it's on the way. It's on the way, guys. And just to give you guys an update, because it's getting late and kind of tired, tax season, so I'm just running low on fumes here. But Monero's moving its way up in the rankings, guys. It's moving its way up. I mean, if you're not psyched about that, I don't know what to tell you. But I think when we started the channel, it was just about to pop out of the top 50. Slowly but surely, though, it's making a comeback. I mean, it's really moving up. It's at 37 now. Market cap has stayed pretty much the same since we've started the channel. About $4 billion. I still think it's going to go freaking nuclear, of course. And I think that when more of you guys have conversations with the Bitcoin bros at the conference, maybe we get a whale to understand the value of this stuff. Because seriously, guys, dude, think about this. $4 billion for Monero for this unbelievably novel and perhaps world-shaking technology. I mean, we're so early, it's crazy, especially if you watch this channel. You understand the super, hyper, mega bullish case for this stuff, and it's like no-brainer. This stuff is going to, well, I don't want to give price predictions and be a crypto astrologer, but seriously, $4 billion is goofy. It's a joke, and I think that's maybe like less than 1% of Elon Musk's net worth. If he gets wind about Monero and he starts to get excited about it, dude, the world's going to change like you have no idea. So, and not necessarily for the good or bad. I mean, again, this technology is just neutral. It would certainly change for us because we've got bags, right? Or we don't have bags. What am I saying? I could lose my bag tomorrow. Probably will, actually. I'll let you guys know how that goes. But, yeah, that's it. That's it. Monero Matteo. Anything else I want to say? Just more bullish news. Again, I don't endorse any dark net activity, guys. Use this stuff properly. Use this stuff for good. Use it to build the parallel economy for goods and services in the regulated market. If you're in the black market, hopefully it's doing something which increases the consciousness and spiritual health of the people out there. I've been thinking about getting my church onto Monero. I met a Monero bro at my church who's actually, I think, a deacon or a reader, and it's going to be great to, I think, get the church on board and to really get this stuff adopted by some people that could maybe increase the or just make better the optics, right? Because everybody hears privacy coin. They're like, oh, Uber Goobers using dark internet money to do nefarious things. It's like that's not at all really what we're about here on this particular channel. We think that private fungible money, digital cash, which allows us to opt out of the panopticonical technocratic hellscape, which is on its way. I mean, it's already here now, is a very good thing. And anything that allows us to trade with each other without having these satanic third parties get involved in our business, I think is a good thing. With your local farmer, with your local bullion dealer. I mean, that's key, guys. We've talked about that. If we can get the gold bullion dealers on board, the precious metal bros, then that's going to be a huge win, because gold and silver, it's always going to be money. I don't care what any crypto bro says. It's always going to be a store of value. And if we could get people to accept Monero for gold and silver, guys, that is a huge bridge that we could build from the regulated market to the free market, the black market, whatever you want to call it. Because if people can cash out their crypto for metal, which always stores value, which always has value, and they could sell that metal to anybody else, which, by the way, the metal is completely private, completely fungible, even though, yeah, they're starting to put chips in them, then that gives us more options. That increases the liquidity, number one, but it also increases our possible ways to cash out, to go into different currencies, and to optimize our potential liquidity channel. So that's a couple things I just wanted to fill you guys in on. Not to ramble too much. If you want to check out the social media sites, check them out in the description. Gab, Odyssey especially, Telegram. I've gotten more bros on the Telegram chat. If you want the base takes, if you want more stuff on orthodoxy, which we like to talk about over there, not theologically, just culturally speaking. I'm trying to not speak about theology at all. It's kind of dangerous to me, and frankly, well, let's not get into it. I was about to talk about it. And then, if you want to check out the donation links below, continue to support the channel, you can check out all of our favorite private crypto addresses in the description as well. Really appreciate y'all's support. And I hope that you guys enjoy Monerotopia. I hope it's wonderful. And I hope that you meet amazing people, which I'm sure there will be. So that's it. Monero Matteo. I will see you guys next time. God bless you.